Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Define Disaster. This is Battlefield 1, and in today's episode of Fixing Battlefield, something new, something I wanted to try out and trial with you guys here on the channel. We're going to be talking about spawning, the most basic concept of Battlefield 1, and what we're going to be doing is it's not about hating on Battlefield 1, it's not about necessarily putting the game down, it's about recognizing the fact that there are still a number of issues with the game that could be improved to make it an even better game, so that it can live up to its true potential. And what we do in Fixing Battlefield, basically, and what we will be doing today is talking about one specific issue, in this case the spawning mechanics of Battlefield 1, and seeing how it could be improved, what issues are at hand, and what DICE could do to make it a easier or more better experience. With that being said, then feel free to leave down below in the comments your opinion on this kind of video if you like it. As said, I'm trialing a few new concepts at the moment to increase diversity on the channel from just the usual weapon reviews, so feel free to comment on that, both that and of course future suggestions for this topic, other things that need to be addressed in Battlefield 1 that you think we could have a debate about, as well as of course your opinions on both my opinion on the matter and possible fixes, solutions that I propose or you would like to propose. Feel free to leave all that down below in the comments and we can have a little bit of a discussion. Now, with that being said, there is a number of different areas that I want to cover in today's video regarding spawning. One of them, and probably one of the most frustrating one, is deadman spawning. This isn't actually related to you spawning yourself, but the spawning of your enemy. So you take out a target, possibly with quite a bit of skill, you kill them, and upon their death rises from their body a new enemy to fight. Usually just after you've hit the reload button on your keyboard or gamepad or whatever you're using to play Battlefield 1. In essence, you're mid-reload and you're trying to face a new enemy. You have to whip out a pistol, you're at a significant disadvantage, and you're probably going to die right then and there. There's nothing more frustrating than killing an enemy to see a new one emerge from the ashes of their body. It infuriates me beyond belief, frankly. And the fact that it's part of Battlefield 1 is, well, not desirable, to be precise. Now, I believe to understand where this error is coming from. I'm not quite sure. I'm obviously not a DICE employee, but if I could take a stab at a guess at why this is happening, it's related to the new type of spawning that we have in Battlefield 1. You recall in Battlefield 4, you selected where you wanted to spawn, usually on a teammate, and you'll pretty much be ported instantly to that position and start shooting and firing. In Battlefield 1, this has changed a little bit. You select where you want to spawn, you double click or you press the spawn button or whatever it may be, and then your camera zooms into that position where you already see a green dot on the map, your character, and you then basically appear and take control of a new soldier's life. Now, this spawning mechanic is extended in the amount of time it takes to spawn. In other words, imagine the following situation. Player A kills player B. While player B is taking fire, you, player C, select him to be spawned upon. You spawn on player C, however, once actually in the world, having your spawning process being complete, you find that your teammate, player B, is dead at the hands, of course, of player A. You decide to kill him. So what's happened here is basically you've selected to spawn on player B as player C while they were still alive. However, in the time that it is taken for you to spawn on them, because this is much longer than, for example, in Battlefield 4, player B has actually died, which of course leaves player A at a significant disadvantage because they don't know that somebody's actually spawning on that teammate at the time they are firing at them or at the time they're about to fire on them. Don't forget that it actually can take very little time to kill somebody, so you could actually start the spawning process before even player A has started firing at player B and spawn after player A has finished killing player B. So there's quite a bit of, well, I'd say inconsistency with the amount of spawning and suppression and when you can spawn on who and what actually happens in the game happening here. And it's all down to the fact that spawning just takes about at least half a second, I'd say, to actually complete. Now, this is all fancy, and the reason why DICE did this is because of the pretty animations and fireworks, and then it allows it to make more nice cinematic trailers. However, in practice, the system that we had in Battlefield 4 is a lot better, or at least DICE needs to figure out some way to address this issue. One possible solution could be to revert back to the system that we had in Battlefield 4. Another one, which we don't necessarily have to axe the beautiful new animations and zooming in into the world that we have in Battlefield 1, would possibly be to stop a spawn if the spawn has not quite yet completed and the spawn point becomes unavailable, and not just simply address whether or not you can spawn at the get-go when you start the spawning process, and then once you start the spawning process, independent of whether that point is available or not, you can complete the spawning process. Now, this is maybe a little bit complex, but in essence, it's a very basic mechanic that shouldn't really be in the game. You shouldn't be able to spawn on a dead teammate's body. That's not what we want. It's not exactly fair play for anybody here, not even for you who's who's spawning on that dead teammate. I mean, yes, you may get a lucky kill. However, inevitably, you'll be on the receiving end of this bug or this spawning mechanic. You're not going to be happy about it happening. With that being said, then let's move on to a wider category of spawning issues, and I like to call them the dangerous spawns. So you spawning in a situation that is dangerous. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. It's a first-person shooter. Of course, you're going to be spawning into dangerous situations, but spawning into things like, for example, right in front of a tank, spawning into grenade spam, even better, spawning into a full cloud of enemy gas. How about spawning onto a vehicle with only 5 HP left, which instantly blows up? These are not exactly desirable spawns, and there should be a way to avoid them other than being able to basically predict the future or see into every enemy or teammate's minds. I mean, you can communicate with your squad and that's all fine, but you can't really communicate with the entire enemy team, for example, when deciding whether or not to spawn on a friendly vehicle. And there are a number of very simple solutions, some of which address very specific problems that I have already mentioned now, and some of them which address more overriding problems. Let's start with the more general overriding fixes that we can have. DICE simply introduce health for players and vehicles that we can see when choosing whether or not to spawn on them. As we had in Battlefield 4, I'm not sure why we don't have it in Battlefield 1. Let me see how much health the tank, the plane, or the player that I want to spawn on has at the time that I want to spawn on them. This doesn't give them an advantage, it just makes sure I don't spawn into nonsense, because there is nothing more frustrating to spawn on a tank that has basically no HP and is about to get killed, spawning into it just in time for your enemy to get an additional free kill because you didn't know that the tank was under heavy fire. Now, some of this you can actually see on the map, but for example, if a tank is on low HP but didn't take fire in the last 10 seconds or so, you won't have noticed that on the map. Somebody then takes an AT rocket gun out and decides to blow it up. Well, let me know that the tank only has 5 HP. Maybe I'll think twice about spawning on it. Another example of this would maybe be spawning on a bomber driving towards an anti-AA gun. Now, a bomber can usually survive a run by an AA gun. However, if it's already on 20 HP, I'm maybe going to think twice about spawning on that bomber and trying to help him take out the AA gun, because frankly, there's no way in hell we're going to be beating an AA gun if we're driving right towards it with 20 HP. Simple things like this that we had in Battlefield 4, take them over into Battlefield 1. It'll make spawning a much more enjoyable, consistent experience and avoid the constant dying upon spawning mechanic. Another part of fixing this is to simply give us a view of what's happening, specifically from the view of the vehicle or the player involved. What do I mean by this? Once more, look at Battlefield 4. If you spawned on a teammate in Battlefield 4, you could see their perspective when selecting them as possible spawn points. So you knew, well, maybe they're about to run into a huge amount of enemies which you were just killed about. Maybe you shouldn't spawn on that guy on second thought. Or maybe you see that he's right opposite a massive tank. Well, you may think twice about spawning on him as well, unless you're some kind of genie in the bottle and are going to one-shot kill the tank as soon as you spawn on him. These are simple mechanics as said, but they make spawning a much more enjoyable experience. There are of course more specific problems that require more specific solutions. So if I'm spawning on a friendly player who is in enemy gas, why on earth do I not automatically equip a gas mask? Avoiding taking damage in the first, I don't know, 2 seconds when spawning on them, losing 10, 20, 30 HP, putting me at a disadvantage against anybody who decides to come around and try to kill me. There is actually a logic to this argument as well. If you can spawn on a friendly player in enemy gas, it means they have their gas masks equipped, because otherwise they would be suppressed or taking damage and not able to actually provide you with a functional spawn point. So if the one person I am spawning on is using a gas mask, why on earth do I not have my gas mask on? It makes no sense whatsoever. Also kind of in a logical sense, you know, if you're supposed to be kind of joining your teammate, you'd expect to join them in similar conditions with your gas mask on. At least in my opinion, I don't understand why this isn't automatically the case and why DICE hasn't put this in the game. I mean, there's nothing worse, as said before, as taking damage or dying instantly when spawning upon a friendly force. With that being said, I'd like to know if I've missed anything out. Feel free to leave that down below in the comments, as well as, of course, your suggestions for fixing the problems I've mentioned, or your opinion on my suggestions or the problems at hand. Maybe you think it's not an issue that when you spawn into gas, enemy gas that is to say, you take immediate damage and don't automatically have your gas mask equipped. Feel free to leave that down below, as well as your opinions on, of course, this format as well. This is a new format, we're trying it out today. Let's see what you guys think down below. Of course, always feel free to put your usual video suggestions both for Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 4 down below in the comments as well. But with all that being said, I'd like to thank you very much for watching and hope to see you in the next Battlefield 1 video.